Captain Marcus Webb had been staring at the same dune for 3 hours, watching Shartai scouts appear and disappear like heat mirages in the endless expanse of Kethmora's crimson desert. The human diplomatic camp, a cluster of climate-controlled shelters that looked pathetically out of place against the alien landscape, buzzed with the restless energy of people who had traveled halfway across the galaxy only to wait in the scorching heat for an audience that might never come. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Singh approached his observation post with the careful deference of someone delivering bad news to a superior officer. "The mining consortium representatives are asking again about timeline projections. They're concerned about the operational costs of maintaining our position here indefinitely." Marcus didn't take his eyes off the distant dunes where the Shartai watchers maintained their vigil. "Tell them that rushing desert nomads is like trying to hurry the wind, Commander. We're operating on their schedule, not ours." "Yes, sir. Though I should mention that Dr. Patterson from the xenological team believes we're being deliberately stalled. She thinks the Shartai are testing our patience as part of some kind of cultural evaluation." "Dr. Patterson is probably right," Marcus admitted, finally turning away from his surveillance of the empty horizon. "The question is whether we're passing or failing their test." For 5 days, the human delegation had been camped at the coordinates provided by Shartai intermediaries, seeking an audience with the mysterious Queen Zethera, whose desert empire controlled mining rights to some of the most valuable mineral deposits in known space. The Shartai were a nomadic species whose tent cities appeared and vanished across Kethmora's surface like dreams made manifest, following patterns that seemed random to outsider observers but which clearly held deep significance for the desert dwellers themselves. Marcus had studied every available file on Shartai culture during the journey to Kethmora, but the information was frustratingly sparse. They were described as a proud, ancient people who valued wisdom over wealth, patience over progress, and harmony with their harsh environment over technological comfort. Their queen was shrouded in legends that painted her as equal parts goddess, warrior, and keeper of secrets that predated most galactic civilizations. "Captain," called Dr. Patterson from the camp's communication array, her voice carrying across the desert air with the urgency of someone who just received important information. "We're getting movement on the long-range sensors. Multiple contacts approaching from the northwest." Marcus moved quickly to the sensor station, noting how the approaching signatures moved in formation patterns that suggested military discipline despite the chaotic nature of their appearance and disappearance on the displays. "How many contacts, Doctor?" "Difficult to say. The desert environment is creating interference, and whatever the Shartai use for transportation doesn't register consistently on our instruments." She paused, adjusting the sensor parameters with the frustration of someone fighting inadequate technology. "I'm reading anywhere from 50 to 200 individuals, moving in what appears to be a ceremonial procession." "A ceremonial procession," Marcus repeated, feeling his pulse quicken with the possibility that their wait might finally be ending. "Signal the team to prepare for formal contact." Full diplomatic protocols, but no visible weapons. As the Shartai procession approached, Marcus got his first clear view of the desert people in their natural element. They moved across the sand like poetry given form, their flowing robes and veils creating an impression of beings who existed partially in the physical world and partially in some realm of wind and shadow. Their mounts, if they could be called mounts, appeared to be creatures of living crystal that flowed across the desert surface without disturbing the sand beneath their passage. The procession halted at precisely the distance required for formal communication while maintaining tactical advantage. A single rider separated from the group and approached the human camp with the fluid grace that marked all Shartai movement. When the figure spoke, the voice was melodious and carried easily across the desert air despite the speaker's diminutive size. "The Queen of the Endless Sands will grant audience to the human called Marcus Webb. He will come alone, carrying no weapons, no recording devices, no instruments of war or surveillance. He will place himself under the protection of desert law and accept the hospitality of those who rule where water is scarce and trust is precious." Marcus felt his diplomatic team tense around him as the implications of the invitation became clear. Going alone into the heart of a Shartai camp would violate every security protocol the diplomatic corps had established for contact with unknown species. "Sir," Commander Singh said quietly, "That's an unacceptable security risk. We have no guarantees about your safety once you're beyond our protection." "We have no guarantees about anything on this mission, Commander," Marcus replied, his mind already made up. "But refusing their terms guarantees failure." "Captain," Dr. Patterson interjected, "the Shartai concept of hospitality includes elaborate codes about guest treatment. If they've formally offered protection under desert law, violation of that protection would be considered a profound cultural shame. And if their concept of protection differs significantly from ours, then we'll have learned something important about Shartai culture through direct experience," Marcus said with a calmness he didn't entirely feel. "Prepare a formal acceptance of their invitation. Include appropriate gratitude for the honor of an audience with their queen." 30 minutes later, Marcus found himself following the Shartai messenger across the desert toward a tent city that had materialized on the horizon like something from an ancient Earth fairy tale. The structures were magnificent, pavilions that seemed to be woven from crystallized starlight and desert wind, their walls shimmering with colors that shifted and changed as he watched. The royal pavilion dominated the temporary city like a palace dropped into the desert by divine hands. Its walls appeared to be made from fabric that moved independently of any breeze, flowing and rippling as if the tent itself were a living thing. Crystalline poles supported the structure at impossible angles, creating an architecture that defied conventional engineering while maintaining perfect aesthetic harmony. As Marcus approached the entrance, he counted at least 12 guards positioned around the pavilion's perimeter. They were tall, slender figures whose faces were hidden behind intricate veils, their weapons clearly visible but held in positions that suggested confidence rather than aggression. When they moved, and they did move, constantly shifting positions in patterns he couldn't decipher, it was with the fluid grace of dancers or the deadly precision of apex predators. The entrance itself was a portal of flowing fabric that parted silently as he approached, revealing an interior space that seemed far larger than the pavilion's external dimensions should have allowed. Marcus paused at the threshold, acutely aware that he was about to step into the heart of Shartai power with nothing but diplomatic immunity and hope to protect him. Behind him lay the familiar world of human technology and procedures. Ahead lay mystery, danger, and the possibility of forging an alliance with beings whose capabilities remained largely unknown. The guards watched him with alien eyes that revealed nothing of their thoughts or intentions. Marcus took a deep breath of the desert air, tasting sand and exotic spices and something that might have been magic, then stepped across the threshold into whatever awaited him in the tent of the Desert Queen. The interior of Queen Zethera's pavilion defied every law of physics Marcus thought he understood. The space stretched far beyond what the tent's external dimensions should have contained, with flowing walls that created alcoves and chambers that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves when he wasn't looking directly at them. The air was thick with the scent of desert flowers that shouldn't exist and incense that made his thoughts feel strangely fluid. Soft light emanated from sources he couldn't identify, not torches or electric illumination, but something that seemed to flow from the fabric walls themselves, creating an atmosphere that felt both ancient and timeless. The floor beneath his feet appeared to be sand, but sand that had been somehow transformed into something that felt solid while maintaining the visual texture of windblown dunes. At the center of this impossible space sat Queen Zethera. Marcus had studied every available image of the Shartai leader, but seeing her in person was like encountering a force of nature rather than a political figure. She reclined on what appeared to be a throne carved from a single massive gemstone, its faceted surface reflecting the pavilion's mysterious lights and patterns that seemed to move independently of their source. Her form was partially concealed by veils and flowing robes that made it difficult to distinguish where fabric ended and shadow began, but her presence filled the space with an authority that transcended physical appearance. Her eyes, visible above an intricate face covering, were the deep amber of desert sunset and held depths that suggested centuries of accumulated wisdom. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in his bones, making him wonder if Shartai communication included frequencies beyond normal hearing. "Marcus Webb of the Human Diplomatic Corps," she said, and hearing his name in her alien voice sent a strange thrill through him. "You have traveled far from your water-rich world to seek audience in the heart of the desert. Tell me, what do you truly seek here?" The question was clearly a test, And Marcus chose his words carefully. Your Majesty, I seek understanding between our peoples and mutually beneficial cooperation that honors both human ambitions and Shartai wisdom. A diplomatic answer, Queen Zethara observed, and he could hear amusement in her voice. But diplomacy is often just elaborate lying. I asked what you truly seek. Marcus felt the weight of her attention like a physical force, aware that honesty might be his only chance of success. I seek to prove that humans are capable of more than conquest and exploitation. That we can be worthy partners for those who possess wisdom we lack. Better, she said, leaning forward slightly on her crystalline throne. Though I wonder if you speak for your species or only for yourself. Perhaps there's no difference, Your Majesty. Perhaps every diplomatic contact begins with individuals choosing to see past their differences. Queen Zethara was silent for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that made Marcus feel like she was reading not just his words but his intentions, his character, his soul. Around them, her guards maintained their positions like living shadows, their presence a constant reminder that his life hung in the balance of this conversation. Tell me about your homeworld, she said finally. Not the official descriptions in your diplomatic files, but what Earth means to you personally. Marcus found himself speaking about memories he hadn't shared with anyone, childhood summers by the ocean, the way morning light looked filtered through Earth's atmosphere, the sense of belonging that came from standing on soil where his ancestors had walked for thousands of years. He talked about humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction, their drive to explore combined with their tendency to fear what they couldn't control. You speak of your people with both love and concern, Queen Zethara observed. Do you believe humans are ready for contact with forces greater than themselves? I believe we have to be, Marcus replied honestly. Because the alternative is remaining isolated while the galaxy moves forward without us. Or, the Queen said softly, the alternative is that you prove yourselves unworthy of such contact and face the consequences of that unworthiness. The threat was delivered so gently that it took Marcus a moment to recognize it. He became suddenly aware of how completely surrounded he was, how easily the guard's position throughout the pavilion could eliminate him if Queen Zethara deemed it necessary. Your Majesty, he said carefully, may I ask what would constitute unworthiness in your evaluation? Greed disguised as cooperation. Ambition that places immediate gain over long-term stability. The inability to understand that some knowledge comes with responsibilities that transcend individual or even species benefit. Her amber eyes held his with unwavering intensity. The failure to recognize that true power requires wisdom, and true wisdom requires humility. Marcus realized that every human delegation that had sought audience with the Shartai had likely faced this same evaluation. How many had left this tent? How many had been deemed unworthy of the knowledge and resources they sought? What if I told you, Queen Zethara continued, that the mining rights your people seek are just the beginning? That the minerals you wish to extract are components for technologies that could revolutionize space travel, energy production, and consciousness itself? Marcus felt his breath catch. I would say that such knowledge comes with enormous responsibility. And what if I told you that every species that has gained access to such technologies has faced a choice: use them wisely and join a community of advanced civilizations, or use them destructively and face consequences that ensure they never threaten galactic stability? I would ask what you need from humanity to prove we're capable of wisdom rather than destruction. Queen Zethara rose from her throne with fluid grace, moving toward him across the impossible space of the pavilion. As she approached, Marcus could see more details of her face above the intricate veil: high cheekbones, skin that seemed to hold its own inner light, features that combined alien beauty with an intelligence that spoke of minds far older and wiser than his own. I need to understand not just what humans claim to want, but what they're willing to sacrifice to prove they deserve it, she said, stopping just close enough that he could smell the desert spices that clung to her robes. I need to know if your people can produce individuals capable of choosing galactic good over species advantage. And how would such individuals prove themselves? By accepting responsibilities that transform them beyond their original nature. By becoming bridges between worlds rather than merely representatives of their birth species. Her voice grew softer, more personal. By demonstrating that love of wisdom can transcend love of homeland. Marcus felt the weight of her words settling over him like a mantle of destiny. This wasn't just about mining rights or even technology transfer. Queen Zethera was evaluating humanity's readiness to join something larger than individual species' ambitions, a galactic community that required its members to evolve beyond their original limitations. Your Majesty, he said quietly, what exactly are you asking of me? Before she could answer, the soft sound of movement around the pavilion reminded Marcus of the guards who had been watching every word, every gesture, every nuance of their interaction. He was being evaluated not just by the Queen but by the entire structure of Shartai power, and his answers would determine not just his own fate but humanity's future relationship with forces beyond their current understanding. Queen Zethera smiled, the first time he'd seen any expression beyond careful evaluation on her face. I am asking if you are prepared to discover who you truly are, Marcus Webb of Earth. And whether that discovery will prove you worthy of what I am prepared to offer. Queen Zethera's words hung in the air between them like a challenge written in starlight. Marcus could feel the attention of every guard in the pavilion focused on his response, though when he glanced around the space, he could never quite catch them looking directly at him. They moved like thoughts through the flowing architecture, present and vigilant but somehow existing at the edges of perception. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I came here as a representative of humanity seeking mining rights. I'm beginning to understand that you're offering something far more significant than resource extraction agreements. The mining rights are trivial, Queen Zethera confirmed, beginning to pace around him in a slow circle that felt both predatory and evaluative. Useful minerals that will advance your technology incrementally, provide your people with marginally better ships and weapons and tools. Enough to justify your diplomatic mission and satisfy your superior's immediate ambitions. She paused in front of him, her amber eyes reflecting the pavilion's mysterious lighting. But the true value of what lies beneath Kethmora's sands cannot be measured in conventional terms. We guard technologies that predate most galactic civilizations, knowledge that could transform your species beyond recognition, or provide them with the means to destroy themselves and take half the galaxy with them. Marcus felt reality shifting around him as the implications of her words sank in. You're the guardians of ancient technology. We are the curators of advancement, she corrected. Every species that achieves interstellar travel eventually encounters us, directly or indirectly. We evaluate their readiness for knowledge that could reshape the fundamental nature of existence itself. And most species are found unworthy. Most species destroy themselves with the power they already possess before they reach the point of evaluation. Queen Zethera's voice carried the weight of witnessed tragedies. Others are granted limited access to specific technologies based on their demonstrated wisdom and restraint. Very few are offered true partnership. Partnership in what? In shaping the future of galactic civilization. In guiding younger species along paths that lead to wisdom rather than destruction. In becoming something greater than the sum of individual ambitions. She moved closer, her presence both intimidating and strangely compelling. In accepting responsibilities that transcend loyalty to any single species. Marcus became aware that the guards had shifted position again, though he hadn't seen them move. They were closer now, forming a tighter circle around the space where he and the Queen stood in conversation. Their weapons remained relaxed, but their attention felt more focused, as if his next words would determine whether he left this pavilion as an ally or not at all. What kind of responsibilities? He asked. The kind that require you to choose between human advancement and galactic stability when those interests conflict. The kind that demand you place long-term wisdom above short-term gain, even when that wisdom comes from alien sources. The kind that transform you from a human diplomat into something new, a bridge between worlds. Queen Zethera stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns woven into her face veil, could smell the desert spices that seemed to cling to her very essence. I am offering you the chance to become humanity's first true ambassador to the advanced galactic community. Not just a representative who carries messages between governments, but a partnership that guides your species' development along paths we have seen succeed across thousands of years and dozens of civilizations. And the cost of such partnership? You would remain here, on Kethmora, serving as permanent liaison between your people and ours. You would learn our ways, our technologies, our methods of evaluation and guidance. You would become the filter through which human requests for advancement are evaluated, the voice that argues for your species' worthiness when they seek knowledge that could either elevate or destroy them. Marcus felt the weight of the choice settling on his shoulders like gravity from a massive star. You're asking me to abandon my human life to become something that serves both species but belongs fully to neither. I am asking you to evolve beyond the limitations of single-species thinking. To become what your people need even if it's not what they expect. Queen Zethera's voice grew softer, more personal. And I am asking because my evaluation of your character suggests you might be capable of such transformation. Your evaluation of my character. Marcus Webb, age 34, graduated top of his class from the Diplomatic Academy, volunteered for first contact missions that other diplomats considered too dangerous, spent his personal time studying alien cultures and languages rather than advancing his career through political networking. Her recitation of his background was unerringly complete. A man who chose service over ambition, understanding over advancement, truth over comfortable lies. You've been researching me. I've been researching every human who might eventually be offered this choice. Your name has been in our files for 3 years, ever since you prevented the Andromedan crisis through cultural sensitivity rather than military intervention. Marcus stared at her, processing the implications. You've been planning this conversation for 3 years. We have been planning for the possibility that humanity might produce an individual capable of true partnership rather than mere cooperation. Queen Zethera's eyes held his with intensity that felt like being evaluated by the universe itself. The question is whether our patience will be rewarded. Around them, the guards had moved again, and Marcus realized with growing unease that their circle had tightened further. He was now completely surrounded by beings whose loyalty was absolute and whose capabilities remained unknown. If Queen Zethera decided he was unworthy of her offer, he would never leave this pavilion. What happens if I refuse? He asked. You return to your people with standard mining rights and the knowledge that humanity is not yet ready for true advancement. Your species continues to develop at their natural pace, perhaps reaching readiness for partnership in another century or two. And if I accept, you become the first human to join the Galactic Guidance Council. You help shape policies that affect dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. You gain access to knowledge that could revolutionize human civilization, and the responsibility to ensure that knowledge is used wisely. Queen Zethera moved even closer, and Marcus could see that her amber eyes held depths that suggested intelligence far beyond what he'd assumed. But more than that, you become my partner in evaluating and guiding species that seek advancement. You help determine which civilizations are ready for knowledge that could transform them, and which need more time to develop wisdom worthy of such power. Your partner. The role requires more than technical expertise or diplomatic skill. It requires perfect trust, absolute understanding, complete coordination between minds that must work as one while maintaining their individual perspectives. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. It requires a bond that transcends professional cooperation. Marcus felt his heart racing as the full implications of her offer became clear. She wasn't just asking him to change careers or even change species loyalties. She was asking him to enter into a partnership that would reshape his entire existence, binding him to her and to responsibilities that span the galaxy. You're offering me a choice between returning to my comfortable human life or becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. I am offering you the chance to discover whether you are capable of greatness that serves purposes larger than yourself, Queen Zethera said. Whether you can choose wisdom over comfort, growth over safety, partnership over independence. The pavilion around them seemed to pulse with expectant energy, and Marcus became acutely aware that this moment would determine not just his own future but humanity's relationship with forces that shaped galactic civilization. The guards waited in their circle, ready to react to whatever decision emerged from this conversation. And at the center of it all stood Queen Zethara, offering him a transformation that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure, waiting for an answer that would change everything. Marcus stood at the center of Queen Zethara's impossible pavilion, surrounded by guards whose very presence reminded him that his next words would determine whether he lived to see another sunrise. The choice she offered stretched before him like a chasm that could only be crossed by faith: abandon everything he'd known to become something unprecedented, or return to safety with the knowledge that he'd been found unworthy of transformation. "Your Majesty," he began, then stopped, realizing that titles and formalities felt inadequate for what they were discussing. "Zethara, what you're offering is beyond anything I imagined when I accepted this mission. Most transformations require us to venture beyond our imagination," she replied, her amber eyes studying his face with the intensity of someone who could read souls. "The question is whether you have the courage to discover what lies beyond the boundaries of your current existence." Marcus thought of his life back on Earth. His apartment overlooking the Pacific, his position in the diplomatic corps, the comfortable routine of a career built on careful advancement through predictable channels. Then he thought of the guards surrounding them, of technologies that could reshape galactic civilization, of the chance to become humanity's first bridge to powers beyond their current understanding. "If I accept," he said slowly, "there's no going back. I become something that exists between worlds, belonging fully to neither. You become something that serves both worlds by transcending the limitations of either," Queen Zethara corrected. "But yes, the transformation is irreversible. Partnership at this level requires complete commitment. And if I refuse? Then you have answered my evaluation of your character, and we proceed accordingly." The threat was gentle but unmistakable. Marcus had been brought here not just to be offered a choice, but to be tested. His refusal would mark him as someone who couldn't be trusted with the knowledge of Shartai capabilities, someone who represented a potential security risk to civilizations beyond human understanding. "How many others have faced this choice?" he asked. "In the past century?" 3. Queen Zethara's voice carried the weight of difficult memories. One accepted and became a powerful ally whose wisdom guided two species away from destructive conflicts. One refused and returned to his people with no memory of what he had been offered. One. She didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. Some choices carried consequences beyond simple acceptance or refusal. He looked around the pavilion, noting how the guards had positioned themselves not just to contain him, but to observe every nuance of his decision-making process. They weren't just protecting their queen, they were evaluating him according to criteria he could only guess at. "Zethara," he said finally, "I need to understand something. This partnership you're offering, is it purely political and strategic, or is there a personal component to what you're describing?" For the first time since their conversation began, Queen Zethara hesitated. When she spoke, her voice carried a vulnerability he hadn't heard before. The role requires perfect coordination between minds, absolute trust between partners, complete understanding of each other's thoughts and motivations. Such partnership inevitably becomes intimate in ways that transcend professional cooperation. "You're telling me that accepting your offer means entering into a relationship that goes beyond diplomatic alliance. I am telling you that the work we would do together requires a bond that encompasses every aspect of existence, intellectual, emotional, spiritual." She paused, her eyes searching his face. "And I am telling you that my evaluation of your character has revealed qualities that I find personally compelling." Marcus felt the universe shift around him as he realized the full scope of what she was offering. Not just a career change or even a species change, but a complete transformation of identity that would bind him to this remarkable woman in ways he was only beginning to understand. "The choice you're asking me to make," he said slowly, "isn't just about humanity's future or galactic politics. You're asking me to choose you. I am asking you to choose a future that neither of us can fully imagine but that we would create together," Queen Zethara replied. "A partnership that would serve purposes larger than ourselves while becoming something deeply personal." Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling around him like the desert air itself. Everything in his life had led to this moment: his studies in xenolinguistics, his dedication to understanding alien cultures, his choice of diplomatic service over easier careers. And now he stood at the threshold of becoming something unprecedented in human history. "If I accept," he said, "what becomes of my human identity? It expands rather than disappears. You become more than human while remaining essentially yourself." Queen Zethara moved closer, and he could see the hope and uncertainty in her amber eyes. "But you would belong to Kethmora as much as to Earth, to our partnership as much as to your birth species." The guards around them seemed to sense the approaching climax of their evaluation, their attention focused with the intensity of predators waiting to see whether their prey would run or stand its ground. Marcus realized that his decision needed to account not just for his own desires but for the broader implications of what Zethara was offering. And humanity? What happens to my people if I accept this transformation? They gain an advocate who understands both their potential and their limitations, someone who can guide them toward wisdom rather than destruction. Her voice grew more certain as she outlined the possibilities. Under our guidance, human civilization could advance centuries in decades, gaining access to technologies and knowledge that would revolutionize their existence. Under our guidance? Under the guidance of a partnership that combines human innovation with Shartai wisdom, human ambition with our patience, your species' drive to explore with our understanding of what should and should not be discovered. Marcus closed his eyes, trying to imagine the life she was offering. Working alongside this extraordinary woman to shape the development of multiple civilizations. Gaining access to knowledge that could transform human understanding of the universe. Becoming something new that served purposes beyond individual ambition. When he opened his eyes, Queen Zethara was watching him with an expression that mixed royal authority with personal vulnerability. "I accept," he said simply. The reaction was immediate and transformative. Queen Zethara smiled, not the careful diplomatic expression he'd seen before, but genuine joy that illuminated her entire face. And then she spoke a single word in the ancient Shartai language, a word that resonated through the pavilion like a bell struck in perfect harmony. Veltar. The effect was instantaneous and magical. Every guard in the pavilion simply melted into shadow, their solid forms dissolving into wisps of darkness that flowed into the walls and disappeared entirely. The omnipresent sense of being watched and evaluated vanished, leaving Marcus and Zethara completely alone for the first time since he'd entered her tent. The absence of the guards transformed the entire atmosphere of the pavilion. Where before it had felt like a formal evaluation chamber, it now felt intimate, private, charged with possibilities that had nothing to do with diplomacy or politics. "Veltar," Marcus repeated. "What does it mean?" "Trust absolute," Zethara translated, reaching up to remove her face veil for the first time. "The dismissal of all protection because protection is no longer necessary." As the veil fell away, Marcus saw her face fully revealed, features of startling beauty that combined the exotic mystery of her species with warmth and intelligence that spoke directly to his heart. Her skin held the inner luminescence he'd glimpsed before, and her smile transformed her from an alien queen into a woman whose joy at his acceptance was unmistakably personal. "You dismissed your guards completely," he said, marveling at the trust implied by her action. "I dismissed them because our partnership begins with absolute vulnerability to each other. No secrets, no protection from the truth of what we are becoming together." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the patterns of light that moved beneath her skin like living constellations. "And because what happens next is not for observers." Marcus reached out tentatively, touching her face with the wonder of someone discovering something precious beyond imagining. Her skin was warm and soft and seemed to pulse with its own gentle energy. "What happens next?" he asked. "We begin the transformation that will make our partnership possible. We learn to think as one mind while remaining two individuals. We discover what it means to become something greater than either of us could be alone." She took his hand and led him deeper into the pavilion, to chambers that had been hidden behind flowing walls while the guards maintained their watch. The space she revealed was part living quarters, part laboratory, part sanctuary. a place designed for the intimate work of reshaping consciousness and identity. The process will change you, she explained as they settled onto cushions that seemed to be woven from crystallized starlight. Your human heritage will expand to include Shartai capabilities, your consciousness will learn to interface with technologies that respond to thought rather than touch, your lifespan will extend to match mine so that our partnership can endure for centuries. And you? What changes for you? I gain a partner whose perspective challenges and complements my own, whose human insights will help me understand species I've only observed from a distance. Her smile grew softer, more personal. And I gained something I had not expected to find, someone whose presence makes the loneliness of leadership disappear entirely. As she began the delicate process of guiding him through his first transformation exercises, Marcus marveled at how natural their partnership felt despite its unprecedented nature. Working with Zethera was like discovering a part of himself he'd never known was missing. 2 years later, the Universal Development Council operated from a facility that straddled multiple worlds, serving as the galaxy's primary authority for evaluating species readiness for advanced technologies. Marcus Webb Zethera, he'd taken a hyphenated name that honored both his origins and his transformation, worked alongside his partner to guide civilizations along paths of wisdom rather than destruction. Status report on the Andromedan application? Zethera asked as they reviewed the latest requests for technological advancement. Their consciousness development scores indicate readiness for quantum communication protocols, Marcus replied, his enhanced perception allowing him to process evaluation data at speeds no unmodified human could achieve. But their social cohesion metrics suggest they need another decade before they're ready for matter transportation technologies. Agreed. We'll approve limited advancement with re-evaluation in 10 standard years. Marcus looked up from his analysis to watch his partner work, still amazed by the transformation his life had undergone. The human diplomat who had entered a desert tent had become something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds whose very existence had revolutionized how species interacted throughout the galaxy. Any regrets? Zethera asked, reading his expression with the intuitive understanding that had developed between them. Only that it took 34 years for me to find the courage to accept transformation, Marcus replied, reaching across their shared workspace to take her hand. And that other species still have to wait for their own individuals brave enough to choose growth over safety. Perhaps that will change, she said with the smile that had come to represent home, safety, and infinite possibility. Our partnership has proven that such transformation is possible. Others may follow our example. Outside their facility's viewing ports, ships from dozens of species arrived and departed, carrying beings who sought advancement under the guidance of the galaxy's most successful interspecies partnership. And in the heart of the Universal Development Council, two consciousnesses that had chosen to become one while remaining beautifully, distinctly themselves continued the work of helping entire civilizations discover their own capacity for wisdom and growth. The word that had dismissed all guards and created absolute trust between them had become the foundation for a new kind of galactic community, one built on the revolutionary idea that the most profound partnerships transcended every boundary except the courage to choose transformation over comfort.